James, ready? We'll get going. So go ahead.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Tribal Council. I'm here today to talk to you guys about the Jocko Area Canal Conversion Project. I've talked to you guys, some of you guys have been in some quarterlies that presented that, but I wanted to introduce Molly to you guys and let her, she has a presentation that she's put together and we would like to show it to you guys. You guys can see it all on your monitors, right? Okay. Okay. And then we think we got 20 to 25 minutes and then we have some time for questions from y'all afterwards. Because I was sure you guys would want to ask questions. So Molly, please introduce yourself.
Hello, Chairperson and Council. My name is Molly Davidson. I work with Morris Summarily Engineering based out of Missoula. We have offices throughout Montana. I've been working with CSKT supporting NEPA efforts with their Division of Water Group. And then most recently, we're involved in the Jocko Area Conversion Project for the portion north of the Jocko River. Thank you for having me here today. It's such an honor. This is a beautiful space and I just feel grateful to be here. So thank you for that. Today, we're putting a lot of content in 20 minutes. So if there's areas that we didn't cover to the depth that you would like, let me know and I'm happy to discuss. Also, I get into engineer brain where I understand the project overall, but if there's elements that we need some more clarity on, let me know. So in general, this project, we looked at assessing and modernizing to improve irrigation operations and to promote water conservation in this area. So that was the intent of the overall effort. The outline of the presentation, I'd like to share with you some information on the project location, the project objectives, which were a key component in how we develop solutions. Then we'll take a look at the existing conditions compared to the proposed layout, and then talk about how the recommended alternative was broken into, I like to say bite-sized pieces or achievable pieces to implement. So we'll look at how we phase the project for construction and the associated implementation schedule. So the project's located in the Jocko Valley and it's bounded by the Jocko River and the foothills on the east and Highway 93 on the west. This is part of the Jocko Irrigation Unit, part of the Flathead Indian Irrigation Project. The project area you can see generally north of Arlee is shown in kind of that purple color. This area serves about 4,500 irrigated acres and 115 water users in this area. The project team fundamentally was a CSKT interdisciplinary team supported with BIA and then some technical support by Morris Summarily. And I'd also like to point out part of our planning process was hosting a 2-day landowner open house meeting where we allowed invited all landowners in to discuss the planning process and to get their input. And honestly, it was one of my favorite components of the process. It was really neat. We had a really great turnout and had a lot of feedback from landowners. We were able to make modifications to our alignment, service locations, and have discussions with them on the project objectives. That was a really beneficial process. So the approach to master planning, in particular for this project, is first we got our arms around the existing system. That involved collecting some topographic information, getting content from landowners, taking a look at turnouts, having a lot of discussions with FIP and their ditch writers and their manager, CSKT staff, and also the other disciplines with the interdisciplinary team. So identifying what was there. And then we started to shift into project development. And we realized pretty quickly we needed to be very clear on what the objectives were to help refine a solution that was optimizing those objectives. We worked through assumptions at a planning level. You're not really fully into design, so you have to state assumptions to come up with solutions. And then we identified the constraints, working with our bounds that we're within. And then we started getting into concepts. And thank you. One of the first elements we took a really hard look at, we knew that water conservation was an objective and also operations. And right away we looked at what would it look like to either line the canals or convert them to pipeline. And then if we convert them to pipeline, is it better to have them pressurized or have the pipelines be non-pressurized and pass through flow? And so that was one of the early assessments. Ultimately, and we'll describe in some more detail in just a moment, the optimal solution pointed towards a pressurized pipe system. So that's where we started with. And then we started getting into details as far as, well, what's the best way to put this project in the ground? On one hand, we have a bunch of existing canals that were exhibiting a lot of issues with seepage. There was a tremendous amount of water going in and a lot of water seeping out of the system. And the other element was there was a lot of community pipelines that were on the surface that would exhibit, because there are those aluminum pipes with gasketed joints, they were having issues. Some landowners with a lot of blowouts and losing water that way, challenges with managing those turnouts off of the K Canal. So we had looked at all of those elements and helped identify, well, if we converted this to a pressure pipe system, how can we eliminate those challenges and optimize our design objectives? During the planning process also, we looked at design considerations related to what the turnouts look like, looking at standardizing the irrigation turnouts, how to serve stock water, how to measure flow. Screening, if you put water from a canal into a pipe, you need to look at keeping debris out. Canal level control, control valves, right-of-way issues or opportunities, how to drain the system at the end of the season and what state it might look like. So these were all part of the planning process, setting the stage for a future project and making some decisions so we had consistency when design was implemented. As we talked about, the recommendations pointed towards open canal to pressure pipe. And there was a lot of reasons for that decision, and they're spelled out in the report that you have. But the recommendation was based upon really seizing opportunity to eliminate seepage through longevity provided by a pipe system. Also conserving water by reducing operational spills. This was a point that the landowners also pointed out, that it's challenging end of season when there's flow limitations in the system, and then there might be some water users who aren't observing those piped blowouts on the surface pipe systems. So by providing a solid pipe solution that's buried in the ground, it really reduces those issues when those aluminum pipe gaskets blow out. Energy savings and cost savings. Also energy cost savings. So this is a really neat project in the sense that we're putting canal water into a pipe and there's no pumps in this pipe system. It's all gravity that's driving the pressure in the pipe. And so what that means is the landowners, when they receive their irrigation water, instead of being an open ditch with no pressure on it, instead they'll have a piped connection that comes with pressure. And a majority of the parcels served will be able to receive pressure in the optimal range to run their irrigation systems without a pump. Some of them will still need to use a pump because maybe they're closer to the turnout from the K Canal, like the pressures are not as strong the closer you get to the source, but they'll still be able to reduce their pumping costs and power because of that pressure provided by the system. So that's both energy savings and cost savings for the water users. Enhanced operational controls. There's so many elements that will provide FIPS, the tools they need to manage the system. A big one's flow measurement. That's pretty significant, making sure everybody's getting their fair amount of water. Other elements, valving and setting up for SCADA to be able to control the system and to make it more efficient. Smaller pipe diameter with a pressure pipe. If it wasn't pressurized pipe and it was larger diameter pipe passing through flow, the pipe wouldn't need to be larger, but because it's pressurized, you can go with a smaller pipe. So there's savings associated with that as well. And then a real big one that I think is very important. It's a limited demand water supply. So what that means is because it's a looped pipe back into the canal and we're not sending wastewater down the waste canals, only what the water that's needed is called for in the system. So you don't have to send tail water out of the system. Eventually, this system can speak to the diversion. And if there's, perhaps there's a period of time where you get downpour rain for 3 days, every irrigator turns off their center pivot and there's not a call for water. You don't have to spill the water through the system. You can keep the water in the Jocko River. And that's a pretty big deal, I think, as far as meeting the objectives. Thank you. So what are the objectives? This is the framework we worked upon when we first got together, meeting with stakeholders and IDT and FIP, but essentially fundamentally is conserve water within the Jocko Canal unit for in-stream flows in the Jocko River. So through all of those things that we talked about, reducing operational spills, limited demand flow, and reducing or eliminating seepage allows for that opportunity. All of these elements are a more efficient system. And then the other, when we were laying out our configuration, we really thought thoughtfully, I guess, for lack of a better word, and how to best configure the layout where we can optimize how many people are served water with the most minimal amount of infrastructure. We wanted to provide adequate pressure and flows to water users in the system. This helped drive our pipe size to make sure we could have the capacity to deliver flow. And then also we looked at designing a concept layout so we didn't have too high of pressures in areas. When we got to the lower part of the system, there were some high pressures, and we have some spots where we want to put in pressure reducing valves so we could control that as well. An important one for FIP was to reduce the number of turnouts off of K, so to make it a more concise and consolidated system, and the ability to measure flow. So here is the existing on the left and proposed on the right. So what you see on the left is the K canal. The K is, can you see my cursor when I move it around? Okay, good. So here's the K canal. So you have the Jocko diversion. That's another project that the Tribes is working on that pulls water off the Jocko River, not on this exhibit here. K canal flows this way and then out. Currently, there are a bunch of laterals that come off of the K canal, the K10, K10-4, 14-9, 14, and 14-16 that serve water to these parcels. All of these kind of, they're very faint on this exhibit. I apologize for that. But these other ones, these are surface pipes. These are community pipe systems. Those are the ones that sit on the surface using that aluminum gasketed pipe. The overall surface area is hatched. And this area is crossed hatch over here because the proposed system, we're looking at least stubbing out a line to serve that in the future if desired. The infrastructure will be there. So the proposed layout, the black line is the new looped line off of the K canal. So it will draw water from over here and it draws water from over here. We found there was quite a bit of advantage having two connections to the K canal because it helped temper the pressures to keep a balanced system. And it also served a lot of water users. And then off of this looped line are lateral pipes that pick up all of the service area essentially. What you see here on the north side of the K canal will remain in place in case there is a need to spill water. That time lag time from when you stop calling water from the diversion, there might be a slug of water coming down. You need that water to go somewhere. So the K canal will remain in place, but next to it will be a smaller diameter pipe that can obtain pressure that could serve all of these parcels, including the tribal rangeland down here.
Just one question, Molly. The loop line, what is the diameter of that buried pipe?
It varies. So at the source, because there's more flow coming in from either end, I believe on one end it's 42, on the other end it might be 36 or 42. And as you get to the I guess the middle, the centralized part, the diameter starts to cinch down closer to 18 to 12 inches in some areas.
So the design of your system is to be fully vacated of water in the off season, or is it charged all the time?
We would like to drain it in the off season. To keep water in it in the off season, we'd have to bury it pretty deep, and that would be more costly. So the preference would be to drain it out. So it's interesting because it's like a potable water system in that it's pressurized, but it's almost like a stormwater or sewer system in that you need to drain it out. So it creates some design opportunities.
I know that in managing small water systems that are that way, where you have to drain them,
Mhm.
that shock to the system, there's always movement in the pipe. There's always some additional stress on
Yeah.
the system when you have to do that.
Mhm.
Are you designing for that?
Yes, sir, we are. Well, that's the next step, which will be going into design. We'll be sure all of those measures in place, but I anticipate we'll need to have thrusting, like thrust blocks, similar to like a pressurized water system. And we also want to not overwhelm locations with drain points. So we'd like to have more drain points at logical locations and then drain slowly. Are there any other questions? Okay, I'll keep, so I have the following slides, zoom in and we can look at some detail. I believe, let's see here. Yes. Okay, so overall there's, because of the service area and looking to provide a solution for this area, the infrastructure associated is significant. There's about 90,000 feet of pipe, which is it's a big lift for any one contractor to install. And so as far as being practical to implement the project, we are recommending a phased approach over time, which would be 6 phases. The 6 phases, there's 6 associated colors. We have the yellow here for the north, Cape Canal, it looks like I'm working backwards, south sublaterals projects with the red. Orange is the connection in the Dumontier project, Sodfire Road in the purple, K-Loop South in red, and the blue is the K-Loop North. And part of our planning process was understanding what were logical progressions for these phases. And so what we did, we developed a ranking criteria, and this was really great participation from IDT, CSKT staff, and FIP and how to prioritize which phase would go first. So we put together some ranking criteria that considered a cross section of criteria, and I believe it's on page 59 of the handout you have. You can go back and look and see what our criteria were. But so what we'd like to do, are the proposal at least, depending on how you'd like to proceed, is to implement these 6 phases over a period of about 3 years. So let's take a closer look. The first 2 phases, logically, you have to connect to the Cape Canal. So the phase 1 and phase 2 are those 2 connections I was talking about. And so to get the water into the pipe, there'll be a new check structure in the canal that has some controls on it to control the level that for water to go in the pipe. And then that would include piping infrastructure. And then also part of our consideration of phasing is what can be constructed during irrigation season and what has to be constructed off irrigation season. In an irrigation design, that's a big deal. Obviously, you can't put intake structures in the canal when the water is running, so you have to wait for water to be off. And so when I get to the phasing chart that you'll see, it's also in your handout, part of our identification is doing one that can be constructed on season and one off season per year. The first phase that we're recommending is the K-Loop North, and it's connecting to the Cape Canal. If you go from Sodfire to Rome, and if you were at Road and connect right into the canal, that's where you would connect with the new intake structure and then turn down Martz and then over into White Coyote and pick up the sublaterals over here. There's about 853 acres, 14 water users, and then 15 to 75 PSI. And that pressure range is, as I was mentioning earlier, the closer you connect to the canal, the less pressure you have, right? Because you don't have elevation on your side. And then the further away you get, the higher the pressure. In fact, we have a PRV, pressure reducing valve, planned for that. Yeah, lots of, yeah. There are these pressure reducing valve stations that have redundancy in them that we would recommend. And some people ask the failure mode for a pressure reducing valve is to fail in the closed position. So if there's something that went wrong with the valve, it turns off and not on.
Yeah, go ahead, Nita.
So you said in the beginning, this is all gravity. I know we used to live on Priceline. It was all gravity
Yeah.
then, so you're not dependent on any pumping out of the.
Nope. The only power supply we'll need is for the, I believe, is for the intakes for the controls. And then also we're working through with staff, other areas that would want to be monitored via SCADA.
Yeah, we'll have to, with MVP, both the inlets, at K10 and Marks Road, we'll do underground power to them. So we'll just come off MVP's existing lines.
Okay, the next phase.
Ben, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Jace, the irrigation ditches that goes down along McLeod Lane there, is that going to have water in it too?
Eden,
The one that comes up,
when we're complete with the project, no.
no?
Try
So
to
that's
make more
going to be
McLeod.
dry there along that
Yeah, so
county road.
yeah, the intent is that once as we face construction, some of the ditches will still be used, depending on which phase is executed. But ultimately, at the end of 3 years, all the ditches on the north side of the river will be reclaimed. And if they're next to the county road, though, we'll reclaim them to a borrow ditch, similar to what you would see in Mission or Round Butte. And then the ditches that go across some of the fields, we'll fill them back in. Obviously, a lot of the ditch paths are actually we're gonna excavate them deeper to put the pipe in. So a lot of the pipe's 30-inch. And so, we'll leave 3 foot of dirt above the top of the pipe. So, if it's a 30-inch pipe, the pipe will be almost 6 feet deep at the bottom.
So you're going to have pipe coming from them laterals that come off that K canal. Go all
Yes.
the way across the county roads to those irrigation fields that are across there on the south side of that McLeod Road.
Yeah, if you see here, the K10 -4 lateral line here down McLeod, we're actually going to be on the north side of the road. I think the existing ditch is on the south side of the road.
Yeah.
So we'll probably go out and get a right away from Mr. Raybine. And most of that ground on the north side of the road is his. And we'll come down the north side of the road. And so that's a project, that's why it's a phase 1 project, is because we're not building in the existing ditch. We're going to build basically a new right of way for the pipeline. So we can do that in season. And then once the season's over, we can reclaim the old ditch. And so in some cases, the ditch is much deeper than a traditional borrow ditch, right? And there's been some accidents, people driven in them. Things that wouldn't have happened on a traditional county road happen where the FIP ditches are the borrow ditch. And we'll once we get approval from you guys, we will go to the county and start to talk to them about what the borrow ditch needs to look like after we're done. So that it's, we're trying to better the county roads as well. So they don't have these, in some cases they're 15 feet wide, they're 5 feet, 6 feet deep. We'll fill those in. We'll have dirt from the excavation of the new pipeline to fill those in.
So the pressure on those, on that line coming down from the laterals, that I think there's about 5 or 6 of them up there now. That's along K Canal. Turnouts up there. Is there going to be enough pressure that comes through there to have enough pressure to operate all those sprinkler systems out there?
Yes, Mr. Matt, we designed, and I don't think we have those exact maps up here right now, but the entire north side of the river is designed to be, everybody should be able to irrigate at the same time. Now, the likelihood of that happening is very, very small, but we do know that 70 to 80% of the guys will irrigate at the same time. But yes, the pipeline, everything was designed to have everybody irrigating at the same time. So in the case of some of the private lines, the community lines is what I've referred to them as before, where guys have to kind of alternate. We don't see that being the same logistical issue that it has been in the past. There may be some specific where we don't know the size of the private line, within across this 80, but in general, where we got really good input from the landowners with the 2 days that we were in our Lee there at the community center. We think we know most of the sizes based on what they told us, and that we should be able to deliver water above their current delivery opportunities. For example, the one line that runs down across March Road, we're going to be able to tie into that, and the guys on the right will just tie into their existing underground line, and the guys on the right will tie into their existing underground line. So instead of getting their water from the canal half mile away, they're going to get it there. And I think at that point it's like 65 or 70 psi. So they're going to have quite a bit of pressure, and that will be able to transmit down their main lines to get them more pressure than what they're currently seeing.
Jimmy and I are gonna have a district meeting up there in Arlene, I think on the 28th or something like that. And it would be nice if you come up again, Jace, just to
Yeah, I would love
keep
to.
us and keep the people informed of what's going on, and then especially with Cape Canal going to be started and be construction going on up there and whatnot. I just like to have you guys up there to keep the people informed, and maybe have somebody up there to see what what we're going to have for employment, up there on that canal too. So it'd be nice to, if we could get you up there to
Yes, sir.
give it up.
Would
Appreciate it.
love to come down and
Thank you.
update your the Arlene community.
Jimmy?
Yeah, just had a question. I'm just getting back into council, but I was wondering on your pipe, what material is it? Is it steel pipe, plastic?
We're looking at using a PVC.
It is PVC.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so on the laterals and they got it's all gravity full of pressure. I worked on a lot of pipelines before, that's why I'm asking, but everything I ever did was pressurized. So how long will they last?
It's a C-150 grade, I believe is the kind of the standard spec that we've looked at. We're not completely sure, but that seems to be the right way to go. PVC should last a long time.
Do you ever do a study on what am I trying to call it? It's when the water is flowing or oil, whatever you got going through the pipe, there's friction wear in the corners in the 90s or 45s. Do you notice that in this?
I would actually, Molly's got more experience with big pipe projects than I do.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements we'll look at. The scour you mentioned is a really important issue. Things that we look at is the source water. We're fortunate to have this clean, clear water from the Jocko River.
Yeah.
And then it travels quite a distance before it gets to the intakes. We have the opportunity to allow sediment and things to settle out. And then at the intake structures, we want to have screens, and screens are an interesting thing to design because you don't want the holes to be too big where you let things pass through. But if it's too small, it acts like blocks water from getting through.
Yeah.
So we'll dig into that. And then a lot of the materials will verify that they're resistant to the conditions we have. But we anticipate to have pretty favorable conditions. Things to also consider is like, what if you have a big runoff event and there's water coming off the mountain and the water's more turbid? How do you handle that? But, a lot of the pipe materials and specs we're looking at are typical for this condition.
Well, I know that in oil or petroleum products, there's a lot of sandy material which wears out them corners pretty fast, actually, in steel even. And then, of course, in pipelines, we use smart peaks to go down and see how much wear was in them to be able to replace them.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm wondering, if they're underground, just wondering how you guys check that for.
Yeah.
So the specs I've looked up on the pipe that's kind of our preferred choice at this point has a really, really nice coefficient of friction. So it's really smooth walled. It's finished that way at the plant where it's made. And that has a good longevity with water as the primary media. Obviously, there could be opportunities for foreign material, i.e. Sand or gravel or grit to get in. So a lot of where these pressure reducing valves are, or even turnouts, those generally can act like traps at times to collect material.
Sure.
So, there'll be places where some of that stuff is collected just naturally. And those, when we move through final design, those are things we'll take into consideration. Our drains, or can we use those for in-season traps?
Yeah, I can, without being pressurized, I think it probably lasts a lot longer.
Yeah, the pipe, I have a lot of faith at 50+ years. What we're really trying to understand now is the on-farm measurements, the meters, what the longevity of those is, and what the maintenance is, and what that looks like for FIP, the cost details, the parts that they need to supply, be stocking in Pablo, or not Pablo, Mission at the camp. Really looking at the matrix, the cost matrix of each metering that we're going to go to or potentially go to. And we're also trying to somewhat standardize whatever we really do here will be standardized across FIP. We're not going to recommend something in the North Jocko and then 5 years from now, do something different in Mission or Charlo or Hot Springs. I mean, we want it to be standardized so that we're not creating a level of complexity within their own operations. No different than anything you've seen in the oil field, Councilman Malater. Try to keep it the same so then one guy can go from one field to another and have that standardization in his head. So that's where we're at right now. We're starting to look at those things. We're also using FIP's expertise. Some of the guys have worked at other Indian irrigation projects in the West, and really try to gain from 30 or 40 years of their knowledge. That's the process we're in right now, as we've kind of wrapped up master planning and moving towards design.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead. Ian.
One other follow-up, and I think I probably asked you guys this before, but I didn't realize you're draining the pipe at the end of the year. Do you think that's going to affect any of the groundwater? Because to this point, they've had a lot of leaking and, from that canal and the other deliveries. So I'm wondering if it's going to affect it all that groundwater up at that north areas and across.
It is, just my limited knowledge. I'm by no means a groundwater expert, Councilwoman Matt, but the USGS well, which is just right off Therese Adams, they have seen it gain 20 feet when irrigation season starts, and then that resides when irrigation season stops. Will us draining the pipe mimic that? Probably not, just because the volume of water is going to be a lot less, right? We're just gonna, in the fall, we will, shut the head gate, the turnouts. Well, first we'll shut down K Canal, but K Canal will be open the whole time. It's not, there is a couple in the canyon above the K10 inlet. There is the concrete lining section, and there is a membrane liner that kind of runs down to where the K10 inlet will be. So that's been the current existing condition for the concrete liner for 60+ years. The membrane liner, I think, has been in place for 15 years now. But what we see on the map here in phase 2, that portion of the canal will remain open. We're not planning on lining any of that anytime soon. The big focus for the north side is to put the sublaterals, this is what FIP refers to them as, but what I call K10, K14, K14-16. For example, to get water down to where the vitamin shop is, or the vitamin factory, I don't forget the name of it now, but they struggle immensely to get water that far down. Even to get to White Coyote is a struggle for them. So the pipeline project really operationally makes delivery of water on the north side of the river a lot simpler, because we don't have the ditch loss. And to actually get water down there, they basically got to ask everybody in the top 2/3 of the K10, K14 area does not irrigate. So they have enough water to make the push, because it does. But what we understand it is, and I know Seth Makepeace has asked you guys, he's especially on the south side, but on the north side, we understand it is that the water just basically drops from the canals, goes down and hits the Jocko River water table, and then becomes part of that subterranean or alluvial water flow that goes back to the river. And with, so we see a 20-foot difference, but that's something that I think's been documented and talked about before. But really what this will help is to get delivery more complete and keep the water on the fields and not.
Well, you'd be amazed how much water's in that spring creek down near along
Right.
Price Lane, because we own down there. God, you'd step off into that, it looked like a swamp, and you'd sink, you know, 4 or 5 feet in water. Mary Price could tell you that. We had to try to pull her out of there when she was down there investigating. But it's amazing how much water goes along in there that goes down the spring creek and on down into Shoals. So
Yep.
awful lot of water.
Yep.
Thank you.
And most likely we'll see with you know, less water being pulled out of the river at the Jocko K headworks. Over time, we'll see the river level should be naturally higher. So some of that may be mitigated because the river level will be higher. You know, the time will still tell there. I mean, we'll be watching.
I'll just step through the other phases unless there's any other questions. I think the intent is to show you how we broke these into pieces and the magnitude. Phase 3, it's providing interconnections to get to irrigated parcels, about 1,000 acres served. Again, the pressures range there over 12 water users. This is replacing that old K14-9 with a pipe. And we had, like Jace mentioned, some positive feedback from landowners on this connection as well, because they had some challenges there. Phase 4, about 16,000 feet of pipe, 919 acres served. Again, pressures ranging 30 to 75. This is the connector loop. So there'll be a lot of pressure advantage when you connect the two loop ends, because that helps stabilize the pressures in the flow. Phase 5 is an effort to take the transmission lanes from the surface community systems, put those underground, and then allow community systems to connect directly. And again, the landowners in this area spoke favorably of this concept. Most of them that we spoke with. About 12,500 feet of pipe, 844 acres served. Again, really nice pressure range for irrigation. And then lastly, phase 6, this is a little bit unique system here. This will be a smaller diameter pipe that parallels the canal. The decision was discussed or presented in the recommendations to leave that existing canal in place for overflows, just in case it's needed. And then you have a pipe that takes your needs, your demands for the irrigated lands, also serving the tribal range unit. And I'd like to note that we considered a future condition if the tribal range unit is developed for agriculture in the future, the pipe has the capacity to deliver flow. And then also there's some areas of importance, some riparian zones along the draws in this area. And so we'll put in services there to feed water to allow those riparian zones to receive the water they need to sustain themselves. So the schedule, here's the recommended order of projects. Phases 1 and 2 being the 2 connections to the K Canal. We'd like to, and there's some flexibility to adjust these if necessary, but in general, the logic is to install it over a 3-year period, starting as soon as we can get through final design in NEPA and up to bid, and then continuing. We've discussed ways to offer efficiencies to the tribes. For example, we might put out a separate procurement package to purchase the pipe and then perhaps bid phases 1 and 2 under the same package where a contractor can bid on one or the other or both. And maybe there's some cost efficiencies if they bid on 2 phases. So we're looking at strategy and how to make this effective and efficient. And over time, I think what it'll look like is we'll get the first few phases as the term goes out on the streets for bid, and then get those being implemented, and then continue working on the future phases until the system is built. Over a 4-year period or 3-year period. Here's a graphical representation of the order of events. As we spoke previously, phases 1 and 2 being the blue, and I guess it looks like pink, and then the other phases and the associated timing. this is our best estimate right now. Our start date probably won't be early summer. At best, I think we're looking at late summer by the time for lead time of materials and getting things designed. But we'll work as efficiently as we can to get this going with your blessing, of course. Okay, so what are the next steps? There's a lot of next steps to get there. One is design. And so at the planning level, what we did is we took GIS information, survey information, and a hydraulic model and satisfied ourselves that the system works. We think the sizes are approximately this, and here's the approximate pressures. Now comes the part where we need to start really getting into the details. Do we put the pipe on the north side of the road or the south side of the road? East or west? How do we avoid the most driveways, utility conflicts, coordination with Lake County, easements from landowners? When we met with landowners before, one of the questions was, would you be willing to grant an easement for this project? And we didn't hear any no's at that point. Now we get into the real work of getting those inked. So that'll be part of our process. You know, all sorts of things like that. The turnout locations and turnout, you know, where are those going for landowners? We'll probably hand them a stake and have them hammer it in the, you know, on the right of way line right by their property to make sure we're getting the right spot for their turnouts. Bidding, we talked about that, materials procurement, and initiate construction ideally as soon as we can. One element we're working through as a team is use of local workforce. And so we're looking at opportunities in the bid documents and how we can achieve that. Through programs with the contractors or owner provided materials or owner provided labor. So we're looking at options for that. Also, there's some upcoming coordination with Lake County as we sit down with them and understand what they'll need for work within the right of way. Landowner coordination and outreach, that'll be a critical step. We'll probably need to speak to each landowner as we get through the easements and sort through their turnouts. NEPA process, and then of course, ongoing FIP communication and coordination. So those are all the things we're working on. And Jace, did you have something to add?
No, and I didn't prepare to say all that. Yeah, I mean, stuff we've talked to you guys about, right? We're really trying, we're gonna try to do everything possible to try to make these projects local workforce capable. And some of that will probably be coming to you within the next couple of months with some really big purchases, but we'll talk about it at that time. But I know most everyone, if you talk to me individually, and we've talked before previous presentations, but it's near and dear to our heart, and it's the primary objective with the Jocko canals. So. Do you guys have any more questions for Molly or myself?
Any other questions? Good presentation, Molly, Jace.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your questions and for having us.
It does stimulate more questions for me, but I'll save them for another day.
That's fine. Feel free
Maybe
to
I'll
reach out.
come to the meeting that Jimmy and Binger are hosting, but it's interesting to me, very interesting.
Yeah, you know, we got some great concepts. We don't have all the final details worked out yet, but that's we're trying to find the right answers and really looking the pipeline project or canal conversion project for the north side of Jocko lays the groundwork and the path forward for, you know, areas that are really in our, you know, for those of us that grew up here and spent a lot of our times driving around on these dirt roads, there's a lot of the project that makes a lot of sense to also go into pipe. And we want to, you know, we don't want to be, oh, well, we got an M1000 valve here and a Q10000 over here. You know, we want them all to be, you know, J76s. And so we're doing our homework right now. And there's some phone calls being made to make sure we spend our dollars the right way. And we got to be frugal with that. So.
Question on the easements, is there like a standard rate then for those?
We're investigating that.
Okay, that's another day. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jace, is possible to get information laid out as how much it's costing per served acre per phase, as well as per served user per phase?
Yeah, we could probably generate those numbers, I believe.
That would probably help in negotiations for easements.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have a general, we have a general idea what it's going to cost per acre. Yeah. And then, you know, within the compact that obviously was approved and signed by the secretary in September, you know, there is language that there is right-of-way language within the congressional act itself. So we need to understand, and I'm sure this will kind of be the tip of the iceberg for us understanding how the right-of-way process is going to work. So we don't have all the answers there yet. And sometimes that is, you find the answers by making the attempt, so.
Thank you. You need any action from us?
What I would like is, yeah, I would like your permission to take this master plan to Lake County so we can begin discussions with them on how to work within the county right away for roads. And then if you guys are okay, to go and show this formally to the Arley irrigators at their meeting, I believe in April, would be their next one. It might be May. I'm not gonna, it's not gonna be a priority for us. Whenever it fits their schedule and ours.
Okay, Jason. Anita?
I was just gonna say I'd make a motion if we needed a motion to move forward with the proposed plan and take it to Lake County and then on to the irrigators.
Motion by Anita to take the proposed master plan to Lake County and the irrigators. Is there a second? Second by Jimmy. Any further discussion? Seeing none, show of hands in favor. Um, 9-4-1 abstention.
I'm gonna
Mike?
abstain until I can actually read the whole thing.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman McDonald and ladies and gentlemen of the council. Appreciate your time today.
You bet. Nice to meet you, Molly. All right, next we have the Elders Advisory Meeting. Kootenai Culture Committee. Okay, next on our agenda is the Kootenai Cultural Committee Elders Advisory. Vernon, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah, thank you to you guys for continuing with the meetings with us. We're looking forward to all the meetings. I do want to, before I give a chance for any of the elders to bring up some of the other issues, I did want to let you know that I received so I don't know if you've been able to follow the litigation stuff going on about the Hecla mine, and so but we've received some communications about that today, and there'll be other filings happening, so that'll be going on as well. So, but I just wanted to let you know, and any of you that if you do you think perhaps I should, I don't know if the attorneys, I know Chelsea is part of the communication with the attorneys, and I don't know if she's forwarding all of the confidential client information to you guys also or not. And if so, if you would let me know, I can certainly share some of that with you. But with that, I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for continuing with these meetings, and I'd like to open it up for any of the elders or any of the council that would like to say anything first.
Would like to just say thank you to you, Vernon, for starting that conversation with the Kootenai Forest Supervisor. I know you had said you knew him and you started that conversation for us to meet. And so that's great. I appreciate that, Vernon. I want to make sure I acknowledge that. So hopefully you heard something back from him.
Yeah, well, he's kind of in a pretty busy schedule right now, but we're trying to figure out a time that, and thanks for sharing the times that you're available, because I think then that'll help quite a bit, with moving it forward. So.
Okay, we'll open up the open mics. Is there any updates council wants to share with Kootenai elders in particular?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead,
Mr.
Len.
Chairman, members of the council, as I mentioned before, when we start these meetings, that we always have minutes from the previous meeting. I don't know if those were made available to us, but I think before we start any meeting, we should probably approve those minutes. So, but I'm not sure if we have those available to us today, but I think in the future, let's start the meeting out in that, so we make sure that we have all of those statements in the minutes. We have them of record, and so that, and it just helps us track the issues, to make sure that we're following up on these things that the elders have expressed to us.
Thank you, Len. I guess my negligent, I forgot to ask, Vern, I know in the past we've asked if elders group wants to be in executive session or not. So I'll throw that out there for you.
Yeah, well, I had stated before, whatever the Salish do, but I didn't realize that they are in executive every time. I have had, since the last meeting, I have had some questions and some requests to not be an executive. So, and I don't have a problem with that myself, but if any of the elders group would prefer executive, if you could speak up now, that would be great. And if so, I'm sure that the chairman will honor that. But otherwise, we could just stay in open.
Sure.
I try to keep our other meetings open to whomever and anybody that would like to listen in on the elder meetings that we have on the second Wednesdays. I always leave it open. They just have to request a link, and then just have to make sure that we can identify who they are when they check in, so that we could kind of keep an accurate roll. And then other than that, we keep them pretty much open to whoever wants to listen in. I do ask the ones that are on those meetings that, if you're not a part of the elders committee and there are issues that are brought forward that need discussion amongst them, if you would just listen, and that time is really for their opinion and their discussion on the issues. So but other than, and everybody's been really good about that. So.
Go ahead, Len.
I forgot what I was going to say. No. Mr. Chair, members of the council and elders committee, I just also wanted to briefly mention that last week, the council has made a decision not to go live streaming our council minutes. And so we will be airing those minutes after we have the opportunity to edit those. And the reason we chose to do that was to protect some of our strategies that we have discussed. For example, land acquisition opportunities and things like that. And also we'd also have done that just to protect individual tribal members as they come forward and want to address various issues with the council. So those are two of the reasons why we opted to not live stream anymore. So I just wanted to inform you all, because I know there was a lot of questions that came up, and at one point in time, I know people thought we were gonna just quit putting those council minutes out on social, or the council meetings out on social media, which is not true. We will just be providing the edited version out there. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thanks, Len, for providing that update. Leonard, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of council. This question, I guess, is more for Len than the rest of you. Have you heard anything back on the building out in Elmo as far as getting some cameras set up or anything? Have you heard back from Rick?
No, I have not. I believe he has tasked that with Lisa Shords, and I have not yet heard, and I will follow up with that this afternoon, just to give the council a little a briefing on that. Recently, there was the Elmo maintenance building was broken into and vandalized, and some power equipment and various other tools were stolen. And so Leonard brought this to my attention and has requested that we try to get some security cameras or some kind of security watch over there if we can. And so I did bring this up with Rick, and Rick is following up with Lisa to see what we need to do to get that done. So no, I don't have an update for you right at this moment, but I will follow up here before I leave the office today.
Thanks, Len. Another question, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Leonard.
Could you give a little briefing on what's going on with the irrigation project as far as starting work on that, rehab work, and what I talked about earlier about trying to get a workforce for the tribal membership?
I'll try to do that. I'll rely on our other elected officials. We just had an update from Division of Engineering and Water Resources on the potential master plan, finalizing the master plan for the Jocko Irrigation District. Plans for construction of pipe and a construction season and a strategy moving forward that they would take out to the public and other officials to finalize. That's one of the main projects, along with some fish screen diversion points they're working on right away in the Jocko also. But they do have other plans for other diversion structures, drop structures throughout the system. But their main emphasis at this point in time is in the Jocko. They're doing their due diligence as best as they can to put in their contract elements, local workforce. They're also working with the college on workforce development for different opportunities there. We keep stressing that until we see the final bids on certain projects, we won't see what the true expectation of what local opportunities will be there, depending on who gets the bid, how much of their own expertise they bring in with their package. But we're going to emphasize to maximize that point, Leonard, as best we can, and begin that process to make sure we do workforce development for everything associated with the water rights settlement and anything else in the infrastructure law that would behoove our membership as far as working and buying local and developing a workforce. So it's in its infancy. So, and our frustration is the same as yours. So we're going to, every day, I listen to council and we're all speaking the same speak. So that's one way to gain momentum and determination that we will ultimately maximize this the best we can to benefit our membership and workforce and local economy. If any other council has anything else to add to it? Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, maybe, Mr. Chair, working with Salish Kootenai for job and job preparedness, I think is critical for our tribal organization. And whatever we can do to, have the college get people prepared is what we need to do. And just the planning. And my understanding is the Economic Development Office and the college and the other training organizations are working on that employment, those employment issues and training right now. So that was a part of the consultation that I gave earlier. So that's why I knew that was a part of our needs. So thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Leonard.
What is the council's thought, or are you guys even thinking about, we have a few gravel pits on the reservation to get those ready, so whoever works on it will be buying gravel from the tribes. I just really feel we need to put a big effort through on capturing a lot of that money that's being put in for the irrigation project.
Yeah, Leonard, that's kind of what, our engineer Jay Smith was referring to this just a little while ago is making sure that we get everything locally as much as we can, whether that's raw material or it's pipe or whatever it might be, that we develop that. And that's the best we have right now, because those points haven't fully been, they haven't completed all their engineering needs as far as the details of amounts, locations, et cetera. But we will make sure we put that pressure point there at all times.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Leonard.
So this project on rehab for the irrigation project, it's going to follow along the lines pretty much of where all the ditches and canals are at present. Is that correct?
Example of the one we just saw in the Jocko, they may replace a buried pipe in a different location, but nearby. It might be on the other side of the road. So a lot of times they're not disrupting the irrigation season. They'll look at be able to build the replacement buried line in a different location and not to disrupt service with the open canal system during construction period. And a lot of times a new location is preferable given the number of crossings, roads, access points, et cetera. So there'll be changes. Definitely. There are some new locations where pipes going in there's no canal. So there are some changes, at least in the draft plan that I just saw for the Jocko irrigation project north of Jocko River in Arlee. Can't say that. I don't know that for all of them, but at least for the first project we've seen, definitely.
And those will be run through preservation and things like that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there might be new right of way, of course, needed to be secured. But yeah, any ground disturbance absolutely goes through our preservation office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Leonard, we just approved the master plan for the Jocko to be put out to the public, so you'll probably have access to that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Leonard.
Have you guys thought any more about the properties that was purchased across from the Diamond Horseshoe and over by the KOA there, the 80 acres? Any more plans on development?
Leonard, this is Len, the 120 acre parcel adjacent to the Polson KOA campground has been designated as multi-use. One of the uses is 10 acres will be used by SK Gaming for a newer casino. Their intent is to try to get the casino out of the Quatucknook Resort. And but there are some other uses for that 120 acre parcel too that we really haven't gone forward yet. But right now we are in the process of trying to get the property annexed into the city of Polson so we can address the sewer and water needs for the uses of the property. So that's where we're at right now. And I do believe the environmental assessment for the land use has been completed, and I'm not really sure if that's available to the public for review or what the story is on that, but I could sure find out.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Leonard.
So if you're gonna set aside 10 acres for another casino, you will be taking the ones out of the resort and trying to make that a good family environment?
That is correct. Yeah, that was the intent.
Thank you.
Hello.
Junior, go ahead.
Yeah, this enrollment committee that's being established, can you talk about that? Who's choosing these people to be on this committee? Or how far or where are you guys at with this enrollment committee that's being established?
We're in the initial thought process for that. There has been no parameters set up for it. We just know it's a topic that's been there for a while, and that the best way to try to proceed with anything related to enrollment would be to have a working committee that could review current policy, everything related to enrollment and services provided by enrollment. And so that's where we're at, Junior. We don't have anything specifically set up. We're open to ideas or suggestions if you have any.
Yeah, when you guys have these discussions, I'd like it if the elders advisory committee can sit in on these discussions. You know, I think there'd be some ideas that this committee could have, you know, that we could share with you guys, you know, as far as the Kootenai part of it. like who would be a good representative for us to be on this committee. I guess how the committee would be established, who would sit on this committee, that kind of stuff. So it'd be nice if the advisory elders committee could sit in on these discussions.
Absolutely agree with you. And we would make sure that we would be able to provide that opportunity. Definitely, Junior. We want to have any ideas or considerations that are out there. He is completely rely on everybody's input and especially as you mentioned it. So appreciate that.
How about this DNA policy for the tribes?
Thank you for the question, Junior. Yeah, last week, the enrollment staff approached council with a new DNA policy where they would do the actual tests in-house. Council at the time wanted to review this further and have the discussion with the full council before we looked at doing any type of policy change, especially when it comes to DNA testing. So there is a proposed one. It just has not been passed yet, and we'll probably be addressing that here within the next week or two.
Thank you, Lynn.
It would be nice if the advisory committee could be in on this also. I think that's real important. That we have people sitting in on these meetings, from the advisory committee. That's pretty big what's taking place here. And, instead of taking the staff's words and then taking it to you guys and you guys passing it and then bringing it to us. We would like to be part of this. Hey.
Understood.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Leonard.
So what spurred the DNA policy? How did that come about?
If you will let me.
If Lawrence is on, he could probably explain, have a better explanation than me, so.
Okay,
Go ahead, Lawrence.
yeah, the main reason why we brought it to the council is because DNA collection and processing is an expensive process, and a lot of the family members can't afford it. They can't afford $540 to do a DNA test. Now, what we brought to the council was for us to be authorized to do the collection, not the testing. What we would do is collect the specimens from the cheeks and submit that to the DNA lab for the testing to do either a sibling test, a avuncular test, or parentage testing. And it'd be a lot less. It's only $70 per individual instead of $550. So they would be only paying $140 compared to $550. So it's a lot less expensive if we do it in-house. And the persons that have to do the collection have to be certified to do the collection. There's a specific process that has to be done, and how you do it has to be
done exactly the same each time. And so if we do it in-house, we'll be able to save it. A lot of the other tribes, Caldwell and other tribes in Washington do their testing, and it's been working out pretty good for them because it keeps the cost down. Families can support it, and it's just something that's more beneficial to the membership.
Would that be used for enrollment testing?
What was that, Jim?
Would that be used for enrollment testing?
Correct. There's two of us that are certified in enrollment that took the test, and we took the training and took the test and passed it. That would be Chastity Haynes and myself. Also, DHRD has individuals that are certified that can be used also.
Lawrence, how many requests do you have a year for this?
We have about 35 applications for DNA testing right now.
We'll call you Lawrence Povich.
Know that, Lawrence, I appreciate anything that reduces the costs, provides the same service, but reduce the costs and actually even protects the confidentiality, but even better with their own staff involved. So I appreciate the alternative that you've provided us for consideration.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a follow-up question to the gaming?
Sure, go ahead, Leonard.
I see Martin put on, I don't know why he didn't say it out loud, but there was going to be machines left at the resort. You either do one or the other. You don't need to keep adding buildings with casinos. I just don't see us, going in the right direction. We either got to put it in good to make the gaming more profitable, but having other buildings and just putting out more machines in other buildings is not the answer. And if that's the case, I'm totally against the casino over there across the bridge. We got to make the one that we have more profitable somehow. Thank you. Question, Mr. Chairman, excuse me. I know the last meeting you guys were talking about purchasing more property up there in Hot Springs. Is there any dialogue going on amongst the administration and council about building Hot Springs Resort up in Hot Springs?
Rebuilding the Camas bathhouse?
Yes.
That also is part of the bigger picture on the discussions for development, economic development overall, economic development for the Hot Springs community, and trying to identify the best way we can spend for economic development or limited resources. So yeah, it is actually part of the discussion points.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Len.
just to add to that, Leonard, the council has also agreed to move forward with trying to purchase all of these properties that are in the, what would you call it? The mineral water aquifer in the Hot Springs area. a lot of the properties that are already developed, we've already had some properties offered to us. And realize the importance of trying to get ownership of those properties. So that's one of our priorities over there before we really start doing any planning for development on those. So thank you.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would encourage the council to lean more towards the Camas Hot Springs development than the 120 acres there across from KOA or next to KOA. You know, we've known in the past that the Camas Hot Springs was profitable, and I think we should really look hard on redeveloping that and getting it going. Thank you.
Thanks, Leonard.
Any thoughts from council on that?
One of the things we're also, really focusing on with the Unitary Water Management Board is looking at all the groundwater protection zones that we need to analyze and maybe formalize so that we can protect this valuable water and assets that are out there that we have a tribal water right to existing. So that's part of the development background for us to move forward with any major development expenditure for rebuilding the Camas bathhouse or purchasing any other geothermal feature or facility on the reservation. So we're hoping to do that as quick as possible.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Levi.
That's the Indians' natural healing. I thought, that would be one of the top priorities on development would have been the bathhouse. Was very successful. I was one of the first jobs when I was 12 years old was going to work there, and that would come there every year. They'd be back and stay there all summer long. I said that's healing waters that you guys should really look at developing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Levi. A lot of us definitely agree with you.
Mr. Chairman, question on the recreation.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, since the fees went up, you guys approved those as of March 1st, correct?
That's correct. They went into effect March 1st.
And the question is, how are we going to handle, have you guys thought about watchers, gate watchers, whatever you want to call them, down at Sloan's in Buffalo for all the four-wheeler use and side-by-side use, as well as jetty, same thing? Since you didn't close those parts down?
Yeah, Leonard, Chief Game Warden Dan McClure is going to be coming into council, talking about his staffing plan and operational setting for this spring and summer. And we look forward to that. I know that he was concerned about some of his staff retiring some vacancies that he had. And I do know that he's been able to recruit existing law enforcement personnel to move over to a game warden position. So we won't, I was a little worried about we might not have staff that are official game wardens that are cross deputized or gone through the academy, but it looks now that things are looking much better for Dan's program, and the backlog of getting in the state academy for law enforcement is an issue. We still will have some vacancies coming up this summer, but the forecast that we were looking at before is much better. So he's going to come in and have that presentation.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Leonard.
What about, how would you go about getting deputized or recognized by the federal government for these types of things?
There's a federal academy that's out there. Our cross deputization agreement, though, for state law, and this is one of the critical things that the new county attorney, prosecuting attorney, is going to do as much as he can to prosecute under state criminal trespass any violations of our regulations. And of course, in any of these new regulations that are set forth. So we're really looking forward to working with the county in prosecuting any trespassers or non-licensed, or, well, they're all trespassing if they don't have a license. If they're breaking any of our code, they're trespassing. And so he's stepped forward and is going to bring the full force of state law upon any non-members violating our rules.
So what's the thought, Mr. Chairman, about the recreators using side-by-sides and four-wheelers, horses and bikes? Is that going to be prohibited, or is that going to go along with the fee that's being charged? Will they be able to use those recreational tools?
Recreation regs are the same as they've been. Any off-roading is prohibited. And then the new closed areas are just open to tribal members and their immediate families. Of course, any non-member then would be not part of that. A tribal member family would be prohibited from being on that landscape in any way, shape, or form, whether it's ATV, horseback, or bicycle, or walking. So the other regulations are still in force on the rest of the recreational landscape that's open to the public with a rec permit.
So they'll be able to use the other recreational tools or whatever you want to call it with the fee increase, correct? Is that what you're saying?
That's, if it's lawful under our regulations, they would still be able to do that with the new fee increase.
Yes, that's what I was asking. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Levi.
I don't think there should just be some specific areas like there used to be that they could go recreate. They're already tearing up some of the. I should look into that a little more and the way it was. Thank you.
Thanks, Levi. Nita? Nita, go ahead. Sorry, Nita.
Excuse me. I just wanted to get back to the hot springs. How long are we gonna have to wait before we hear of any progress happening? It's out as well. We're looking at it. We're studying it. I mean, by the time you guys get that built, I'm gonna be dead. So how long do we have to wait for any progress to happen?
Go ahead, Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a good question, Nada. In regards to any development on our tribal properties up there, yeah, it's gonna be a while, but we are in discussions right now with the owners of some properties up there that we have not yet secured a buy-sell agreement, but we hope it'll happen soon this year. So that's where we're at with that.
Nita, the one thing I can say to you is that I fully expect that we're going to have our groundwater protection zones identified and authorized and fully functioning by the end of this calendar year. So that's a dramatic step forward that we've never had before, never been a tool to protect our interests and our development rights. So I fully expect that. How we take what limited resources we have to identify what, if it's a travel plaza we want to do in Elmo for a gas station, or if it's rebuilding the Camas bathhouse, or purchasing another development that already exists using geothermal resources. I think there's still, I'm optimistic like Len is, but there's probably still some more due diligence that we need to do, particularly for existing facilities where we need to inspect them and realize what their form and function really is, what their needs are. But obviously in the water compact, there's opportunity for us once that money is freed up and there's no more challenges to it. And we can be creative on how we can use that funding that's still coming to us here within the next few weeks. We want to be able to use it as fast as we can. But there's some recipes and some timelines that have to happen before that development money is available to us. And that might be, a couple of years yet, unless we get really creative. And we have some fantastic staff that are working on being creative and how we can get to that investment money to be able to put it on the landscape in areas like what you're concerned about. So I know staff's really working on it hard. So we're trying to be creative and utilize that funding.
So do you, excuse me, do you guys have like lists of things that is needed, say like in Elmo, the hot springs and different areas? Like, we have that building in Big Arm, and I hear talks of it, but I don't see anything happening, or I don't hear of anything happening. And like, had we started something when we first acquired all of that and start putting something into play, the people wouldn't have to go so far to get a loaf of bread. With the gas prices, I come down to Pablo once a month because I can't afford, the gas price. And it's gonna get worse. And so I was just wondering, when it's time, do you say, okay, now this certain project is on like a priority, we'll go full force on it? Or did you have to sit back and study which is more important? It's like all our money is being put into studies, you know. So I'm getting up there in age and I have, yeah, there's been progression, but these last few years, I haven't seen really anything. And, I just, so, okay. We're progression, is gonna bypass us until land, is $1 million an acre, But, like housing, those houses in Elmo that were first built, a lot of them are, they're getting too old to really renovate. And so, and it's like just the people that own them are the only people that's ever gonna live in Elmo. What about the younger generation, we talk about homelessness. Why are we like that? If we took care of our people and we had this in place already, we wouldn't be looking at homelessness. We're not New York or LA. We're just a little country place. And so we really shouldn't have the homelessness here on the reservation. But I want to see progress. I really do.
Thank you, Nada. Go ahead, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Nada. That's a really good point. I have had a discussion with council about trying to develop the existing Big Arm store and at least try to get a convenience store going up there for the community. However, we also were reminded of the Elmo master plan that was developed back in 2002, I believe it was, where it identified commercial development just adjacent to the hall and Highway 28 and some of that properties. So we wanted to move forward with a plan and the idea and concept of constructing a general store, travel plaza business type business there. So we have asked our Economic Development Department to identify some funding options for us to move forward with the planning of that. So that's where we're at with that. As for prioritizing, no, we have not identified any priorities when it comes to development of properties. We focused a lot of our attention to Hot Springs because, well, we got the water settlement funds coming in now, so we wanted to try to pick up all of those properties up there that are being offered to us right now, and so we can start planning for development on those. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But I hear you. There's been no progress in the Tri-Cities. And, especially when we see the price of gas getting close to $4 or $5 a gallon. We're going to be at a place where a lot of people aren't even be able to make it to Polson. So yeah, we need to stay focused on getting something up there at the up in Elmo where we do need a store and a gas station, definitely. And I just ask you to continue to engage us about it. Keep asking us about it. Where are we at with it? I know it's frustrating, but it's it's one of the ways that keeps us moving on it. And so that's kind of where we're at. But I appreciate you bringing that up. I do.
Question, Mr. Councilman, Council?
Yeah, go ahead.
With a master plan, Len, you were talking about in 2002, was there any kind of, since then, any kind of architect work done for the Y there in Elmo for a plaza being built over the years?
No, I believe it just identified parcels of land that would be identified for certain uses. But no architect and engineering plans have been developed yet.
Loretta, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question on all of these projected plans that you guys are talking about. I'm just wondering, where is all this money coming from for these projects? Have you guys identified pools of money? Because as far as I know, the only real money that the tribes have at this moment, and we don't even have all of that, is the compact funds. Where is the rest of this money coming from for these other, like for the purchase of all these different properties that you're identifying?
Loretta, as for the project in Elmo, we have asked our economic development department to identify funding options for us, grants or whatever, wherever we can seek. But all of the other properties that you mentioned in Hot Springs, those properties do qualify for acquisition dollars that we can get from the settlement funds.
Greg, I see you're on. And your light's blinking, Greg. Maybe you can enlighten us a little bit, enlighten us on the
Certainly.
discussion of funds.
Certainly, and Ms. Hoots, that's a good question, and I appreciate you bringing it up. I think that part of what we're talking about, particularly at the Y and the development of the fuel plaza, and that really lends itself back to what we've already completed, which is that feasibility study to make sure that we understand how large we need to build it, how many pumps we need to put there, how much of a convenience store footprint do we need to put there, what will our staffing concerns look like, what will the revenue generated from those various activities be, and to balance that economic inflow against what the potential cost is to put that project together. My task has been to find financial resources both within the tribe and external to the tribal organization that we may be able to borrow for a construction loan or a short period of time that would be predicated on some of the financial success that particular establishment and development on that corner would be designed to capture. The objective would be to capture some of that fuel traffic that flows in from the Camas Hot Springs side that travels north and off the reservation to the north, as well as to provide local access for residents in the Elmo area for convenience store and grocery needs, as well as to provide an ongoing economic benefit to the community where there might be some managerial and seasonally impacted work there for the influx of new motorists that come to the area, as well as the ongoing staffing of the C-store or whatever might be located in that suite at that corner.
Follow-up question, please.
Go ahead, Loretta.
So with that feasibility study, when was that feasibility study completed?
That was a recent one tied to the Big Arm Resort and the convenient store gas station. And they looked at the various zone of area that the development could go in. It wasn't limited just to the old service station above the Big Arm Resort.
How much did that feasibility study cost?
I think that it was entirely funded by a grant. It was entirely funded by a grant, and it was presented within the last 45 days to council.
So there was a grant that was applied for that paid for the entire feasibility study of that area, is what you're saying. That's what you said, right?
It paid for the feasibility study of a fuel plaza and the economic impact that it would be in a 7-mile radius that used the focus of, or the center of, was the Big Arm convenience store. And I think it is appropriate to use that same study applied just north at the Y, because I think that there's a better economic benefit for the large scale footprint as opposed to the smaller Big Arm convenience store or existing locations footprint. Because
Okay.
what was identified was that in order for it to be as financially potentially economically beneficial would require greater footage in order to accomplish that than was just available in the Big Arm location.
Okay. So with that being said then, and I understand that you said that now you're looking at funding as to how you're going to make this happen and when you're going to make this happen. Do you have a plan of some sort as to how you're going to approach this and when you're going to approach it and who is going to approach it?
So those are all good questions. I think that there are some existing state easements that we need to make sure that we have the property free and clear and that there aren't any state impediments to that. So there are a couple of different workings going on there to make sure that we have that area free and clear. I've put in a request to find some additional financing, whether it's a construction loan or whether we want to allocate certain pieces of our existing portfolio to accomplish that. And much of that's going to be predicated on, do we have the property that's there? So to answer your question, this is an ongoing concern of the Economic Development Group. It's an ongoing concern of mine, but part of it is based on whether we can perfect the ownership of the area and whether or not the size and scope of the project warrants the financing necessary in order to get us there, or if we have to put some of our own money into that project. So this is ongoing.
So Greg, with the study that you said you can move from, that was done in Big Arm to the Y in Elmo, how many acres are you looking at for the Y, for the plaza?
I don't have an acreage number off the top of my head, but I can tell you this, the scope of the plan mushroomed into including 12 pumps. We can't put 12 pumps at Big Arm's convenience store location, but we're not committed to putting 12 pumps at the Y. What we believe is that there should be that is the better place to put that for the total economic development, both of the convenience store, the economic development of that area beyond just 2 pumps at the existing location.
A follow-up with the pumps you think you want to put in, would that include diesel pumps or just gasoline?
The proposal included all three grades and diesel.
And they're going to be separate when you pull in, make it actually like a truck stop type
We're
gas
not,
station?
we're not committed to any particular design, but the feasibility study said that in order to maximize the potential economic impact, we would want to consider more pumps, and 2 wasn't going to get us there. I don't know if 12 is too many. We haven't in the last 45 days, sir, we haven't totally taken that concept and turned that into a request for a proposal for drawings or any of those things. And that's predicated on us not fully having a clear picture of whether or not there's still a state easement there or not.
You know, with 12 pumps, I think, you know, we're counting on grabbing more of the traffic that runs to Rollins to gas up. I know a few months ago, I was up in Big Draw and there were some people halfway through Big Draw was wanting to know where the nearest gas station was, because they come through, and I don't know if they come through Kalispell or through Polson, but they were wondering if they should turn around, and I told them no, they could make it to Hot Springs. But I think 12 pumps would be more than enough. Depends on how many you put in for diesel and how much for gas. And really, you can't project that until it's built and operational for the traffic to start really coming in. We know the traffic runs through there, but if they're already filled up, they might not stop to fill up, but they might stop for snacks or so. You know, and I think it's going to be a bigger benefit for the Tri-City area as well as, you know, even people in Proctor and Rollins to come down if there's a grocery store type setup.
Go ahead, Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vernon and the Elders Committee. I apologize. I was picking up my child from school. And I just want to ask a favor, I think, right now. We had this discussion right at the beginning of this about why we decided not to live stream what we do. We've talked about a lot of things in the last hour and a half that are very, like, if I was a developer listening to us right now, I'd be chomping at the bit to buy every piece of land I could in the Tri-City area. I'd be trying to buy Hot Springs right now. So I would ask that we keep this, what we've done so far. We're not live streaming on Facebook, thankfully. I would like to keep this an executive or a private conversation. Call it Elders Committee privileged, because I don't want that kind of development here. Elmo needs food security out there, but I don't want a bunch of, you know, do you guys want a town pump there that is just going to exploit the area? And you know, I mean, look at town pumps in at the Y or you know, and going towards Missoula. Like, they're not pretty places. You know, let's get something there that gives quality food that's healthy for the communities and not just some junk food. I mean, that's still a food desert. So if we could please do that, because again, if we publish these and we air these minutes, that's public to everyone. And, you know, our friends will know what we're doing and also our enemies will. So that is my request. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Martin. Go ahead, Loretta.
Thank you, and I agree with Martin on the publication of this meeting, but I also agree with what we are going to be selling at this convenience store, because we do have a lot of people that are striving for food sovereignty right now, because of the expense of going to the grocery store and trying to purchase just a week's worth of groceries on the costs of what we're paying today. And so I think that we need to look to our local um, gardens to supply, to, you know, to assist in supplying these stores or store, whatever it is that we're looking at, you know, and local people for eggs and things like that. But back to the pumps, you know, when you drive through Pablo and you look off to the left over there by the tribal complex, what do you see sitting over there? You see a gas station that's got 8 pumps. I think they have 8 pumps out there. And then you walk inside there and you look and see, what do they sell in there? It's nothing but junk. It's all junk. So I think if we're gonna start talking food sovereignty, then we need to start at home. We need to look at Quicksilver. Why are they selling all of that crap in there? And they've been doing it for how long? No one said a thing about that. You know, so if you're gonna start talking about what we're gonna be selling out in Elmo, then let's start talking about what's being sold at Quicksilver. That's all I have to say about that.
Question, Mr. Chairman?
Oh,
Let him go.
go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, does anybody, how many acres do we own around the Y there that's tribally owned? Does that go all the way up around the curve heading towards Hot Springs on 28? Past the substation there? Is that all tribal?
I
That'd
believe
be on the
so.
south side?
I know we put when we had the boat check station. Yeah, I believe it is. It just there.
Well, I
Yeah,
know that little piece is tribal. Does it go past the substation there?
No,
That's
it
all.
doesn't. It doesn't pass the substation. It goes to the substation and towards Kootenai Culture.
yeah, I'm not sure where. Check on it.
Okay. Well, I kind of know where it runs. I just want to know if you guys knew where it ran. Because Greg mentioned that, you know, some of the state land around there, but I was kind of wondering why he was mentioning state land when all of this is tribal, all the way up almost to the corner up there, quite a ways up the corner. Because past that, Jensen's owned that property.
Sure. Rick, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think part of the, Leonard, part of the reason we're still really early in this process. And so total acreage we might need is really, we don't have an answer because we haven't really even evaluated it yet. But Greg mentioned the state because one of those parcels that's owned by us had a state easement in it. So it's not, we're not talking about state land. We're talking about making sure that we can get rid of that easement. And we've already started conversations with the state on that. And I think these are good. These are really good comments. I appreciate the challenge of food sovereignty in particular, and starting at home. But I just want to make sure in terms of context, it may not ultimately be a gas station first, if it's anything. We just, we had that idle property in Big Arm, and in trying to figure out what to do with it, got funding to do a feasibility analysis, and that provided an opportunity to look at a maybe more profitable spot. So there's going to be, if this moves forward, I think it would move forward with a lot more due diligence than we have right now. And just so you know, it's not even guaranteed that it will be CSKT that would construct and operate this facility if it comes to fruition. So just context, hopefully it's helpful.
Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Elders Committee, and I guess Loretta, if what I said came off wrong, what I mean is we don't need convenience stores. Yeah, Quicksilver is horrible. They got great tasting food that's horrible for you, and they make specials and everything else, but most of the processed food that they sell in stores is bad, you know? So like the idea with these type of things is fresh, local, you know, meat, produce, you know, dairy, if you can handle it, like those type of things, you know, like, yeah, we need gas, we need all those type of things, but, you know, I'm not saying that Pablo's the model, you know, Pablo's probably opposite the model. I mean, you have the store here that, this is all gonna be private, so this store over here that sells really cheap alcohol and really expensive food. And look what it's done to our community. So, you know, that's not what we need in every community. You know, we need someone that actually cares about like the success of communities, not just someone that is there to make a buck. And so, you know, I want what's best, and let's try to strive for what's best going forward, you know, like from north to south. So I apologize if that was offensive, and I mean, we need better, and you guys deserve better. So let's go.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Leonard.
So is the council or your executive team, whatever, looking to lease that out to someone private for them to come in and build it and run it and operate it? That's obviously one of the options that you're thinking about, because it was mentioned a couple times, correct?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you. My intention, Leonard, was to highlight how far away from actually having an actionable plan this is. It's really just in discussion phase. And all options are on the table because there's not a path forward other than this document we have that's causing us to think. So I don't know if anybody would say yes definitively or no definitively to your question, or really any of the questions or concerns that have been raised at this point.
Well, I guess, thanks, Rick. I guess the reason I'm saying that is because Len just said, you know, there was a feasibility study done in 2002. So we're 20 years down the road and we're going to keep talking about it. And we had Big Arm looked at and it's too small. We all realize that. That's pretty obvious that you can't put more than 2 pumps there. And there was a problem with the pump there at the beginning with because of the tanks leaking. So Nada's comment is, how much longer are we going to talk about it? It's been in the works for 20 years, but nothing, no other paperwork's done. And it's not going to get any cheaper. Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Leonard.
You know, I guess that's why the elders are meeting with council, and I'd like to hear councils individually how they feel about these things and what we've talked about and try to bring up and try to move forward. And we're stuck at studies.
Yeah, Leonard, that's, I can certainly tell you my own personal opinion. So I share the same concerns for the Tri-Cities. So when I know somebody maybe living on a very low income, they're that kind of mileage away from a grocery store. I want to make sure that they can acquire healthy food, that they can get their supplies, that if that's possible. If that means that there's at some point in time, there's some service provided to that area, or there's opportunity for a store, gas station store, whatever it might be. There's obviously there's a need. As you look at the void, as you mentioned, Leonard, of no gas station from Lone Pine all the way up to whatever that store is north of Dayton gas station. That's quite a distance when you're talking about Highway 28, or you're coming back down to Polson. So there's obviously an opportunity. There's a couple of unique opportunities that are missing in a long stretch of a highly traveled transportation corridor. So, and along with their own community needs. So I think there's great opportunity for economic development, or at least service to our own membership that can be provided in the Tri-Cities area. And what better place to focus it than right in the Elmo as a center point in the confluence of Highway 28 and Highway 93. So I'm as an individual using my own common sense, and I think it's a good opportunity, and would love to express it as fast as we can. There's just limitations on where we get the funding. And so as Rick and Greg look and try to figure out how we can finance things, how we can do development, how we weigh that development against the other needs that we have. We have $8 million in deferred maintenance on existing tribal facilities all across our government landscape services we provide. So there's just a lot of, points to consider. And if we can pull from new money to do some development, then that's a win-win. So I think that's the challenge that Greg is looking forward to, being able to bring in some new money or new sources of funding that we're able to use, or we can leverage existing funding that we have that's tied up in some way, shape, or form, like the water compact. So we're putting a lot of stress on staff. We want to move forward. We'll try to do our due diligence. And so Nita, I want to see something, as quick as possible. I share your concern. And I know I can speak for a lot of other council members that they feel the same way. Give you any exact time frames, can't do it, but we'll try. Go ahead, Nita.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment as well. I mean, you look almost every place that we all represent, and in the Dixon area, actually it comes all the way from Hot Springs with nothing through the Dixon town site, and then all the way up to Mission to try to get gas and services. And I've actually got a call from a non-Indian that is trying to get the store going down in Dixon town site. There's absolutely no place to go get food unless you either drive to Mission or drive to Charlotte. And the problem there is the price of the groceries. You want to try and shop local, but my golly, you end up paying $200 more than you would at Walmart or any of your other box food stores, and it's horrible. But to get groceries, that's your choice. Either you got to drive groceries and gas, you either have to drive to Charlotte or drive to Mission. And Mike can attest, they're coming out of, that's quite a ways there from Hot Springs all the way to St. Ignatius going that way. And like I said, coming the other way, you got to go either into Charlotte and pay more, or into Ronan. But I think that we're all seeing these food deserts, and I very much support trying to get something going in these areas. We need it. It's just a matter of finding the funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. I can remember 50 years ago where the grocery stores would deliver to your house, and they would hit a whole line of families. They'd load up the station wagon and you had charge accounts at the grocery store. And they would just take off and yeah, because people, they didn't even have a car to go to the grocery store. They delivered it to you. So, you know, I think there's niche markets out there and opportunities, but the food delivery system to some of our you know, remote communities would be beneficial. Go ahead, Nita.
Well, so the water compact money, okay? Does the hot spring water, does that play any part in the water compact monies?
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nada, yes, it does. There's designation as a use in the compact settlement dollars for development of geothermal possibilities. The biggest problem is it's part of the monies that's basically tied up until we get all of the money, which right now we're into our second year and not all of that money's actually delivered for 8 more years. And so that's where Mr. Chairman was talking about trying to get creative financing to utilize some resources where we can't access that yet, but it is dedicated and can be used for geothermal development.
So how many years, how many more years?
Right now, we're still waiting for 8 years on part of the money.
Okay, so couldn't the tribe take a look at like going to the banks or something like the casinos did and stuff like that? Because I think if you developed the hot springs geothermal, a lot of money can be returned back to the tribe. It's years ago when Pat was on the council, you know, is trying to push for them to expand or rebuild the hot springs bathhouse. So we went up into Canada and up there and in from there, they have a beautiful resort, and people from Texas and New York and these big organizations, you know, they rent those places, and those guys were 12 years ahead in bookings. 12 years. And, you know, it's a pretty penny to rent a place like that. You know, I was looking into trying to go stay a weekend and stuff. Perhaps down here by Perma, and $250 a night. Hello. You know, so I would really like to see the council push to try to get something fancy or whatever up there in Hot Springs ASAP. Because the money coming back from that, you'd be able to do other projects.
Go ahead, Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I heard somebody ask, what have you guys accomplished? And I don't take that as a negative, you know, I wonder that sometimes myself, but you know, taking on the Bison Range and the water compact and EKI or the dam, you know, that has taken a lot of the wind out of our sails for a long, long time. And I remember year after year trying to figure out where are we going to get $4 million to fight this water compact for this, you know, for this water and pay for all the all the things that go along with that. And I thought, you know what? Water is the most important thing to us. Are we just gonna let it go? No. We did what we needed to do. We bit the bullet and we tightened our belts and we got these things taken care of. And I feel like as a tribe, we have accomplished a lot. And, I see, when I see something like EKI bringing 6.7 million to the tribe, SKT, 8 million. And then I look at the water settlement, and when all that money gets in here and the interest on over $1 billion, I was told is a lot of money. So that hasn't all come to fruition yet, but I believe when it does, we have a lot of opportunity. And so what I've seen in the last, probably last year, maybe since Rick's come on, I hate to give him too much credit, but since reorganization has finally started to hit the ground running with all of the new positions, and that costs money, but all the new positions and what it has brought to this organization of thinking outside of the box. I mean, did we ever think we'd have a homeless shelter? No. We could never get that done in the past because there just wasn't the people to get the work done. And now we see what staff are doing on what is it, the land management of managing our properties that we have, that are, some of them are just sitting idle and could be making buku bucks for us. And it's that kind of thought process I think this council is starting to really look at. But yesterday, we thought we could go after all of it. The C-store, the two places in Hot Springs, I don't want to mention that. Doing Big Arm, and then just all of the things that we have talked about. And then we step back and we realize, you know what? We need to prioritize. We need to make sure, I know I've heard Loretta say, yeah, you guys going to do another feasibility study. I agree, Loretta, but I think that still needs to be done. But we need to move on it when we do them. And if we're not going to do them, don't do a feasibility study, because usually that's what makes that final decision that we're going to move forward. And so I think we're doing a lot of things, but yesterday we realized we have to prioritize. And so that's gonna take the wind out of a lot of people's sails if we don't go with the C-store or the store in Elmo, or if we don't go with the Hot Springs. I say for Hot Springs, just redo the cornhole. Can you imagine? I mean, I've worked there back in the day, and that cornhole brought in more people to soak just with sitting outside. And so I know, and I'm just talking now, but anyway, I think the council has really taken on a lot, and we're trying to move, and we're trying to show that we mean what we say and be respectful about it, and accomplish things. And we understand the need of Elmo and the Tri-Cities, but we also understand the need of Dixon, of Hot Springs. So we have to look at it all, because this belongs to all of us, not just a few. It belongs to 8,000 members, and we need to make sure we balance that out and do it right, and not think we can just buy everything, because we can't. And I like the idea of borrowing money. I don't mind that, because I think, if we have the money coming in later on down the road and we can do it now, why not? But that's just my thought. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Loretta, go ahead, Loretta.
Thanks for that, Carol. But you have to remember that, and I know I'm going to sound like a broken record. We've been around for a while. There's a lot of us that have been around for a long time. And we've heard this time and time and time again. And I just, there comes a point, when people say, well, then when are you going to do something about it? Why are we still talking about it 30 years later? I say that all the time. I'm still saying it. I'm 61 years old. I was 30 when we started talking about this stuff. I'm 61. Nada's been around for a long time and she's still hearing this stuff. And we've lost elders that have been listening to this promise after promise. We're talking like broken treaties. And we're still talking about it. I mean, we have broken treaties within our own tribe. You know, and then you talk about priorities and you talk about all these funding issues that we have. You know, I know that. I know about prioritizing. I know about feasibility studies. I know about all of that stuff, you know. And to be honest with you, 8,000 members, there's not even that many of us that live here and that actually are here, that are taken in what we have here, which isn't very much. And it's getting smaller by the day with all of these non-members coming in and buying up all of this property and pushing us off to the side like we don't even exist. And you know that as well as I do. But you have to remember that we've been here for a really long time listening to this. And when you talk about prioritizing and then you start naming off all of these other places, and here we sit in the Tri-Cities, what's the last thing that we got out there? What is the last thing that we got out there that anyone can remember? I can tell you what it is. But, you know, and then when you talk about these feasibility studies, and I don't know why you guys are getting grants and paying these people thousands and thousands of dollars to do a feasibility study when you can send a tribal member out there to stand on a road and count cars. Because that's kind of what you guys are doing, and to see how many people are passing through these towns and which direction they're going and all of that stuff. I mean, you can pretty much put a feasibility study together in any way, shape, or form that you want. The people aren't going away. The people are coming here in droves, and they're not getting jobs here because they're working from home in these huge companies that have allowed them to work from home. And they're buying these $1 million houses around here, or that are only worth about 300,000, but they're buying them, paying $1 million for them, driving up our property taxes. And I know I sound like a broken record, and I get tired of talking about this thing over and over and over again, but you know, the bathhouse, had we done something about that thing 40 years ago, it wouldn't be in the condition it's in right now, because it's not even worth trying to rebuild right now, because not only to mention the fact that it's got asbestos in it, you know, there's not even a chance for that thing to even be rebuilt where the existing condition that it's in. You would have to remove that whole thing and start over. And yeah, Carol is right. What about the cornhole? You know, why haven't we done anything with that? And it's just dilapidated. There's hardly anything left of that cornhole. But I just, you know, I don't know, you know, I know there's a lot of frustrated people out there. I'm one of them. I'm really, really frustrated. And I know we're not made of money. Some of you guys, some people within the tribe think that we're made of money, and there's a proverbial money tree sitting outside the tribal complex out there somewhere. I've looked for it. I actually went over there last week and looked for it. It's not there. So I don't know where all this money is coming from, but I know that you do need to prioritize, but I also know that you guys need to think about who you're prioritizing. Because we've been sitting out there with nothing. And I mean that literally. Nothing. It was like that 30 years ago when I left here, and I come back 30 years later, it's still like that. Thank you.
Thanks, Loretta. Anything else? I guess we'll, I don't want to hear any more comments. Vernon, we can wrap it up.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to, want to thank the folks for all of their input. And I want to thank you guys for, you know that I know what a difficult job you all have there, and I appreciate you being there. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to our groups and to give time for the folks to come and bend your ear and stomp on your toes perhaps, or, I really appreciate that you take the time to do this. But you can kind of tell from the gist of it, the theme kind of is the same, usually, month after month, and that, we're still talking about it. And when is the action going to happen? But there was just a couple of points that I wanted to make, kind of in closing for this, and I wanted to talk about, bring up a couple of points on some of the things. Martin, I wanted to say thank you for the suggestion on executive, because I think that, discussing the economic course, you're absolutely right. If I was a developer, I'd be saying, hey, that property right there is where we want to invest in, and so you gotta, that's a good point. So I think if we could leave this discussion in, or at least the parts discussing any economic development, if we could leave that part in executive, that would be appreciated. And there was a couple of comments, and one was about the Water Management Board and the water protection zones. That's really critical for the tribes. One of the things that I wanted to put out there in that area for your consideration, and also to keep in mind as we go forward, is the Polson water and sewer. We're talking about annexing that property across across from Diamond Horseshoe into the city for the city water, but that city water runs in hoses or pipes actually across the river. It runs through the river, and that, and as that ages and gets leakage and gets, I would like to, say, hey, if we're talking about protecting the water, we need to urge Polson and if need be, to help find some funding for it to have the water wells or the water treatment part of it on the other side of the river, and not having them piping the water and sewage across the river right there at the bridge. That's that's a temporary thing that really needs to be fixed. I also wanted to ask about, a couple of things. First of all, I got to plead guilty for not reading all the way through the closures and everything on the fee use areas, but we had discussed that the permits would include family members, whether they were tribal members or not, and the immediate family, if it was spouses, children, grandparents, grandchildren, would be included on being able to use the closed areas. Am I correct on that?
Vernon, the rule is the same way as the Lozo primitive area and the South Fork primitive area. So those immediate family members that are accompanying that tribal member are allowed to go in with the rec permit.
With the permit. Oh, I see. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, and then the other thing that I wanted to ask about was what the progress on big medicine, on the retrieval of big medicine. And also, I also wanted to find out about the name for the bison range. It was suggested, the name in Kootenai and Salish and in Kootenai, Quishka and Nasukin is what the Kootenays called big medicine. And so has there been any movement, or have you considered finalizing the name for the range?
No, we haven't had any further discussion other than a couple of email reports back, but we have not. It's on our list to do yet.
Okay, in our last meeting, the elders group here, approved one of our elders who doesn't speak a lot until it's necessary, and we're really glad that he spoke up, and he said the name, he reminded us of the name that the Kootenays called big medicine, and that was Quishka Nasukin, and so we would like to put that forward as part of the name. We aren't for or against the use of park or refuge or whatever else you wanted to call it, but the Kootenai name for him, we did want to include that in the name for it. Now, the purpose of this was that you wanted to include the elders' involvement in the decision-making process. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that you guys taking the time to do this. There's, like I said, I don't consider myself an elder, and most of the folks I recruited, are younger than me, so I don't know if they would be, called elders either. There was, hearing community input and involvement in all of the decision-making process is really an important part of your job, and for you to take the opportunity to have this particular group come in and to express concerns and to have discussions with you. I can't express enough how much I appreciate that opportunity, and for you to sit there and to listen to it and to take it and to work on things with it. For example, the development here at the Y, the feasibility study was talking about the Big Arm place, location, 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 when they do businesses, that's exactly what they're talking about, on how much money you can make. And they were thinking that perhaps they could even, at least break even off of the Big Arm property, but there at the Y, I think it's a no-brainer. I think all of you can see the potential there, and so if we could, sometimes you kind of, rely on studies too much when your brain actually, you can see it, so if we could, kind of get some movement on that and get that moving forward, that would be fantastic, because with the traffic flow that goes through there, and with, the local use, it would be beneficial to the local people not having to travel so far, but also what would make it profitable would be that traffic through there. So anyway, those are just a couple of the points that I wanted to make with you, and to be sure and let you know how much we really appreciate the time that you give us and the ear that you give us. So thank you very much. Oh, I see Loretta has her hand up also. So, or did you forget to take it down?
Loretta, is your hand up?
It is.
Okay.
I just had one more quick suggestion for you guys, for the tribal council, the chair and the tribal council members. I know Anita had a district meeting not long ago and it wasn't very well attended. From what I heard in the wind. Anyway, a suggestion is that when you have your district meetings, I believe, because I've heard this said, and I've heard it said on more than one occasion, that perhaps you do not have all of these updates from these different departments, that this is the time for the tribal membership to have free reign and be able to speak to you as membership to tribal council. Because when you get up there and you have all of these different departments giving reports, and then at the end of the meeting, you have 5 minutes left for the general membership, it doesn't set well. And that's why your membership, your numbers are so low at these meetings, because nobody wants to go there and listen to all of your employees speak. If they want to hear them speak, they can go to the tribal complex. And I believe that you really need to get back to listening to your membership. And that's the way that you should probably do it, is to not have your departments report at these meetings. I mean, there's a time and a place for those. Have a section in the Charcusta set aside for each of those departments to do their updates or something. But that's just my little 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Loretta. Well, with that, I think we'll adjourn our meeting with the Kootenai Elders Committee. Want to thank all of you for participating, and your input is valuable. We appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you, Vernon.
Who's Kootenai?
Oh, that's right. Martin has one update he was reserving for the end of the agenda. Go ahead, Martin. Nada. All right, Martin, you're up.
All right, I think we were in executive, might as well stay there.
We were not in executive.
I know, it was kind of a joke, but yeah, I would request executive then.